Hey guys, tonight we delve into the sweeping, windswept plains of 12th century Mongolia, a landscape that forged one of history's most formidable and often misunderstood figures, Genghis Khan. Imagine, for a moment, that you are there. The wind howls incessantly, a biting, relentless force carrying the scent of wild grasses, horse sweat, and the distant smoke of dung fires. Your world is one of yurts, or gurs as they were known, animal hides stretching taut over wooden frames, offering meager protection against the brutal extremes of the climate. Survival here isn't a given. It's a daily, desperate struggle against starvation, warring tribes, and a landscape that offers little comfort. Honestly, given the infant mortality rates and the sheer brutality of intertribal warfare back then, you probably won't survive this early period we're about to explore. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It really helps the channel continue to bring these deep dives into the past to you. And hey, while you're at it, drop a comment below with where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always fascinating to see our global history-loving community. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself in a world teetering on the edge of monumental change, a vast, untamed expanse stretching from the Siberian forests in the north to the Gobi Desert in the south. This is the homeland of the Mongols, a collection of nomadic tribes, fierce and independent, constantly vying for resources, for pasture land, for dominance. It's into this crucible of hardship and conflict that a boy named Temüjin is born, sometime around the year 1162. Historians still argue whether his birth occurred near the sacred mountain Burkun Khaldun by the Onan River or in another location. The Secret History of the Mongols, our most significant native source, offers details, but definitive archaeological proof remains elusive. His father is Yesuge, a chieftain of the Borjigin clan, a man of some standing, known for his courage, perhaps even for a touch of ruthlessness, a necessary trait in these lands. His mother, Huelun, a woman of the Olkhanud tribe, was, according to the chronicles, stolen away by Yesuge from her newlywed husband. A Merkit warrior, such bride stealing was a grimly accepted, if often violently contested, feature of steppe life, breeding vendettas that could simmer for generations. Imagine little Temüjin's first breaths, drawing in the frigid air of the steppe. The traditional Mongol dwelling, the gur, is a marvel of nomadic engineering, easily disassembled and transported by ox cart or camel. But it's far from a palace. Smoke from the central fire, fueled by dried animal dung, wood being a scarce commodity on the open plains, stings your eyes and lines your throat. The scent of boiled mutton, the staple of the Mongol diet, hangs heavy in the air, mingled with the aroma of fermented mare's milk, the potent erag or kumis, a drink that provides vital nutrients and a bit of a kick, even for the youngsters. There's a constant awareness of the animals, the hardy Mongol horses, small but incredibly resilient, the sheep, goats, and oxen that represent a family's wealth and their very means of survival. These aren't just livestock, they are life itself. Temüjin's early years, as described in the Secret History, are marked by portents and prophecies, common enough in tales of great leaders. One famous story recounts his birth clutching a blood clot the size of a knucklebone in his right fist, interpreted by a shaman as a sign of his destiny to become a great warrior and ruler. Whether this is historical fact or a later embellishment to legitimize his rise is, of course, open to interpretation. What isn't debatable is the harsh reality of his upbringing. You learn to ride a horse almost before you can walk, to shoot a bow with accuracy from a young age, to endure extreme cold and blistering heat, often in the same season. Life is a constant education in survival. You learn to read the landscape, to track game, to anticipate the movements of rival clans. There are no schools in the modern sense. Knowledge is passed down through oral tradition, through stories told around the fire, through the practical lessons of herding and hunting. When Temüjin is just a boy, perhaps 9 years old, his father, Yesugei, takes him to find a suitable bride among the tribe of his mother, the Olkonud, or a related Ongirat clan. It's a journey of several days, and on the way, they meet Dae-session of the Ongirat. He remarks on Yesugei's son, noting his bright eyes and keen face. An arrangement is made. Temüjin will stay with Dae-session's family to work for his future father-in-law and get to know his intended, a girl named Berta, who is a year or so older. This was a common practice, a form of bride service. Yesugei, before departing, leaves his son with a warning, a rather prescient one, as it turns out. Be careful of dogs. Some interpret this literally, others see it as a metaphor for untrustworthy people. The pivotal moment of Temüjin's early life arrives with brutal swiftness. On his journey home, Yesugei encounters a group of Tatars, long-standing enemies of his people. The Tatars, recognizing him, offer him food. Mongol custom dictated that one should not refuse hospitality, even from enemies. However, this hospitality is laced with poison. Yesugei manages to make it back towards his own camp before succumbing, but he dies a slow and agonizing death. This act of treachery is not just a personal tragedy for Temüjin. It's a catastrophe for his entire family. With the patriarch gone, their small clan is vulnerable. The Taichiud, kinsmen but also rivals, decide that Hoelun and her children, Temüjin, his brothers Kasar, Kashiun, Temüge, his sister Temülen, and 2 half-brothers, Bedir and Belgute from Yesugei's other wife Sochigel, are now a burden. Led by Targudai Kiriltug, they abandon the family, taking the majority of their herds and followers with them. It's a death sentence delivered subtly, leaving them to fend for themselves on the harsh, unforgiving steppe without the protection of a larger group. You can picture Hohelun, a woman of incredible fortitude, rallying her young children. The secret history paints a vivid picture of her riding forth with Yesugei's standard, trying to shame the deserters into returning, but to no avail. The family is thrust into a life of extreme poverty. They subsist on wild fruits, roots, and whatever small game Temüjin and his brothers can catch, marmots, mice, even birds. They learn to fish, something considered beneath a true Mongol warrior, but necessary for survival. These years forge in Temüjin a steely determination, a deep-seated resentment for the injustices he has suffered, and an acute understanding of loyalty and betrayal. He experiences firsthand the precariousness of life on the steppe and the brutal consequences of tribal disunity. One rather grim but historically attested fact from this period is the tension with his half-brother Bedir. As the older male, Bedir begins to assert dominance, taking the largest share of any food. In a dispute over a caught fish or a bird, Temüjin and his brother Qasar, tired of Bader's bullying, track him down and kill him with arrows. This act, while shocking, is presented in the secret history almost as a grim necessity for their own survival and assertion, though Hoelun is said to have been furious at them for killing their kin and weakening their already fragile family. It's a stark reminder that this is not a world of gentle sensibilities. This is a world where survival often demands ruthless choices. These formative experiences, the loss of his father, the betrayal by his clan, the grinding poverty, and the constant threat of starvation or attack, are the bedrock upon which the future Genghis Khan will build his empire. The killing of Bader, a brutal act born of desperation, undeniably solidifies Temüjin's position as the dominant male in his small, outcast family. But it also underscores their isolation. You can imagine the gnawing fear that accompanies every sunrise, the constant search for sustenance in a land that offers little charity. For several years, this is your existence, a fugitive existence. The Temüjids, who abandoned you, haven't forgotten you either. They view Temüjin as a potential future threat, a viper they failed to crush. They even capture him at one point. Imagine the humiliation Temüjin, the son of a chieftain, forced to wear a wooden kangwe, a heavy T-shaped yoke that pins his neck and wrists, paraded as a prisoner. He endures this shame, biding his time, and eventually makes a daring escape with the help of a sympathetic man named Soldis Shira, who hides him in a cartload of wool, probably not the most comfortable hiding spot, like trying to nap in a giant, scratchy sweater. This escape is a small victory, a spark of defiance that signals he will not be easily broken. As Temüjin matures into a young man, probably around 16 or 17, he remembers his betrothal to Berta. He seeks her out, traveling to the Ongirat tribe. Desechen, Berta's father, true to his word, welcomes Temüjin. The marriage takes place, and Berta's dowry includes a valuable sable fur cloak. This isn't just any cloak, it's a symbol of wealth and status. And for Temüjin, who has virtually nothing, it's a significant asset. It's also, quite cleverly, the key to his first major alliance. You see him, a young man with a growing ambition, thinking strategically. He takes this luxurious sable cloak and travels to meet Togrul Khan, leader of the powerful Karait tribe. Togrul had been an Anda, a sworn brother or blood brother, to Temüjin's father, Yesugei. Temüjin presents the cloak as a gift, reminding Togrul of his past friendship with Yesugei and essentially asking to be taken under his protection. Togrul, perhaps seeing a flicker of Yesugei's spirit in the young man, or maybe just appreciating a really fine piece of outerwear, accepts. This is a crucial step. It provides Temüjin with a powerful patron. Life seems to be looking up. He has a wife, a powerful ally, but the step is never peaceful for long. One morning, disaster strikes. The Merkits, the tribe from whom Temüjin's father had stolen Hoelun all those years ago, remember that generational vendetta, launch a surprise raid on Temüjin's camp. It's swift, brutal, and devastating. They are seeking revenge for Hoelun's abduction. In the chaos, Borda is captured. Temüjin manages to escape with his life, but the shame and rage must be all-consuming. His mother was stolen, and now his wife. It's a pattern he is desperate to break. The secret history describes his desperate flight, his prayers to the sacred mountain Burkhan Khaldun. This is a turning point. He cannot rescue Berta alone. He turns to Togrul Khan, invoking the alliance. Togrul agrees to help, promising to field 20,000 Kerit warriors. But even that might not be enough against the numerous Merkits. Togrul advises Temüjin to seek out another ally, Jamuka, a childhood friend of Temüjin's from the Jadaran clan, who had also become an Anda with him when they were boys, exchanging knucklebone dice and an arrow. Jamuka, by this time, is already a respected leader in his own right. Temüjin finds Jamuka, and his friend also pledges his support. The combined force is formidable Temüjin's small band, Togrul's Kerits, and Jamuka's Jadarans. Together, they fall upon the unsuspecting Merkit camp. The battle is fierce, a chaotic whirlwind of galloping horses, war cries, and the clash of weapons. Temüjin, desperate to find Berta, is said to have ridden through the camp shouting her name. She hears him, and in the darkness and confusion, they are reunited. The Merkits are scattered, their power temporarily broken. It's a resounding victory for Temüjin, his first major military success, and it significantly boosts his reputation. He has avenged the insult and retrieved his wife. Many of the plundered goods and livestock are recovered, and some Merkit women and children are taken captive, a common practice. In the aftermath of the victory, the three leaders, Temüjin, Togrul, and Jamuka, and their followers camp together. For a time, Temüjin and Jamuka, boyhood friends reunited in triumph, even share the same blanket, a symbol of their renewed brotherhood. They live together for a year and a half, their camps intertwined, but gradually, differences in their personalities and leadership styles begin to emerge. Jamuka, it is said, favored the traditional aristocratic structure of the Mongol tribes, where leadership was vested in hereditary nobles. Temüjin, on the other hand, was already showing a tendency to promote individuals based on merit and loyalty, regardless of their lineage. This was a revolutionary concept on the steppes and attracted many commoners and warriors of lesser clans to his banner. Historians still argue whether the split between Temüjin and Jamuka was purely down to ideological differences in leadership, or if it was also fueled by personal ambition and the inevitable rivalry between two charismatic and powerful young men. The secret history provides a famous, somewhat cryptic account of their separation. One day, as they are migrating, Jamuka supposedly makes a remark about where they should camp, interpreted by Berta, who seems to have been quite astute politically, as a sign that Jamuka is tired of Temüjin and wants to go his own way. She urges Temüjin to break away, whether it was her advice or the growing friction or Temüjin's own ambition. The decision is made secretly during the night. Temüjin and his followers pack up and move their camp, separating from Jamuka. This parting is amicable on the surface, but it marks the beginning of a rivalry that will define the next stage of Temüjin's rise. It's like that awkward moment when you and your roommate realize you have very different ideas about whose turn it is to buy the arag. Following the split, many people who had been with Jamuka, and even some from other clans, began to flock to Temüjin. They were drawn by his charisma, his reputation for fairness, his military prowess demonstrated in the Merkit campaign, and perhaps by his more inclusive approach to leadership. He wasn't just the son of Yesugei anymore. He was a leader in his own right, a Khan in the making. One mainstream historical fact is that early supporters, like Bo Orchu and Yelme, who joined him during his times of hardship or his early successes, would become his most loyal and important generals, the core of his future military command. He is slowly but surely forging his own path, attracting a diverse following, and beginning the long, arduous process of uniting the fractious Mongol tribes under his single banner. The taste of victory against the Merkits was sweet, but it also ignited a hunger for something more, something greater: the unification of all the people who live in felt tents. As more and more individuals and even small family groups cast their lot with you. Temüjin. Your camp swells from a refugee band into a nascent power base, but a crowd of well-wishers doesn't make an army, especially not on the unforgiving steppes where your rivals are numerous, and the old ways of tribal loyalty often supersede any individual allegiance. You realize that to achieve your ambitions, whatever they might fully be at this stage, you need more than just followers. You need a disciplined, loyal, and effective fighting force. Something different from the ad hoc tribal levies that have dominated steppe warfare for centuries. This is where your genius for organization really begins to shine, moving beyond personal charisma to systemic innovation. The first, and perhaps most revolutionary step you take, is the decimal organization of your army. This is a well-established historical fact. You restructure your fighting men into units of 10 arban, 100 jagan, 1,000 mingan, and 10,000 tumen. On the surface, it sounds like simple math, something a bored accountant might dream up. But its impact is profound. Crucially, these units are not necessarily formed along existing clan or tribal lines. You deliberately mix men from different backgrounds, forcing them to build loyalty to their new unit commanders and, ultimately, to you, rather than to their old chieftains. Imagine a warrior from the Borjigin clan suddenly finding himself in an arban with men from tribes that might have been his family's enemies just a generation ago. Their survival now depends on each other, on the man riding to their left and right, not on distant cousins back in their old encampment. This system systematically erodes the old tribal structures that had kept the Mongols divided for so long. It's a masterstroke of social engineering disguised as military logistics. Alongside this restructuring comes your unwavering emphasis on promotion by merit and loyalty, not by birthright. Remember Jamuka's preference for aristocratic leadership. You go the other way. If a common herder proves himself a brave warrior and a capable leader, he can rise to command an arban, a jagun, even a mingan. Your early companions, like Bo-Orchu and Jelme, men who joined you when you had little more than your name and a fierce determination, become your top generals, not because of their noble blood, though some had it, but because of their proven skill and unwavering loyalty. This creates a powerful incentive for excellence and devotion. Everyone knows that their performance is what counts, not their pedigree. It's like a hyper-competitive ancient reality show, but instead of being voted off the island, you might just get promoted to general. Central to your new military structure is the formation of the Kishig, or Imperial Guard. This isn't just a bodyguard unit, it's an elite corps, a training ground for future commanders, and a symbol of your authority. Historians still argue whether the initial Keshig was primarily a personal bodyguard or conceived from the outset as a broader administrative and military training institution. What's clear is its importance. Initially composed of a few hundred loyal companions, it grows significantly in size and complexity. The Keshig is divided into day guards, Torgud, and night guards, Kevtul, the latter having the incredibly trusted role of guarding your ger while you sleep. Entry into the Kishig is a high honor, and its members are drawn from the sons of commanders and meritorious warriors. They are your eyes and ears, fiercely loyal and benefiting from close proximity to you, learning your methods and your vision. The quiver bearers, Korchin, and sword bearers, Ba'urchi, are also part of this elite, not just ceremonial roles but trusted warriors always at the ready. Discipline in your army is notoriously strict. The Yasa, your future code of laws, will formalize many of these principles, but even now, the rules are clear and the enforcement harsh. If a soldier deserts, his entire Arban might be punished, even executed. If an Arban advances and another in its J-gun fails to follow or retreats without orders, the consequences are dire. This collective responsibility forges an incredible bond of solidarity within units. They fight as one because their lives literally depend on it. Training isn't a haphazard affair either. The great annual hunt, the Nurge, which traditionally had been a way to gather food for the winter, you transform into a massive military exercise. Tens of thousands of your horsemen form a vast circle, sometimes hundreds of kilometers in circumference, and slowly drive all the game within it towards a central killing ground. This requires immense coordination, communication over vast distances using smoke signals and flags, and disciplined movement, all essential skills for the battlefield. It's a hunt, yes, but it's also a dress rehearsal for war, honing the skills of encirclement and maneuver that will become hallmarks of Mongol warfare. It's probably the most intense team-building exercise ever devised. Your warriors are expected to be largely self-sufficient. Each man typically has several horses, those hardy, resilient steppe ponies we talked about, allowing him to switch mounts and travel vast distances without exhausting his steed. They carry their own weapons, the powerful Mongol composite bow, capable of shooting accurately over long distances, a lance, a sword or scimitar, and perhaps a mace or axe. They wear lamellar armor made of leather or iron scales sewn together, and a distinctive conical helmet. They also carry essential supplies: dried meat, the original beef jerky, borts, fermented mare's milk in leather bags, a cooking pot, tools for repairing their gear, and spare bowstrings. This logistical independence makes your army incredibly mobile. They don't rely on slow-moving supply trains, at least not in the same way as the sedentary armies they will soon face. They can live off the land, or more often, off the people they conquer. Through these reforms, the decimal system, meritocratic promotion, the elite Kashig, iron discipline, and relentless training, you are not just building an army, you are forging a nation. The loyalty of your soldiers is increasingly directed towards you personally, and to the new military structures you've created, rather than to their old clan affiliations. You are creating a unified Mongol identity, one forged in the crucible of military service. The raw material was always there: the incredible toughness of the steppe nomad, their superb horsemanship, their mastery of the bow. But you are honing it, organizing it, giving it a singular purpose and direction. This new kind of army, born from the harsh lessons of your youth and your innate understanding of power, will soon be ready to be unleashed, first upon the remaining rival Mongol and Turkic tribes, and then upon the world beyond the steppes. With your new model army taking shape, a force bound by discipline and merit rather than fractured by old clan feuds, your gaze, Temüjin, begins to lift beyond the immediate horizon of the steppe. For years, you've been locked in a deadly game of thrones with rivals like Jamuka and Togrul Khan, whose alliance with you eventually soured. leading to his defeat and the absorption of the Karets, a story of shifting loyalties typical of the era. By 1206, after a series of brutal campaigns that saw the defeat of the Naimans, the Merkits again, and other remaining opposition, you stand as the undisputed master of the Mongolian plateau. In that year, a great Kurultai, an assembly of Mongol chieftains, is convened by the banks of the Onan River. It is here, amidst a sea of jurs and fluttering banners, that you are proclaimed Genghis Khan, a title whose precise meaning is still debated by scholars, perhaps oceanic ruler or universal ruler. This is a mainstream historical fact. The 1206 Kurultai marks the formal birth of the Mongol Empire and your elevation to its supreme leader. You are no longer just Temüjin of the Borjigin. You are the Khagan of all Mongols. Now, with the Mongol tribes unified under your banner and your innovative military machine, remember those decimal units and the elite Kishig hungry for purpose. You turn your attention south, towards the Jin dynasty. The Jurchen-led Jin dynasty, ruling over northern China and Manchuria, is a formidable sedentary empire. They are wealthy, populous, and possess sophisticated technology and large fortified cities. For generations, the Jin had pursued a classic divide and rule strategy towards the steppe nomads, playing one tribe against another, sometimes demanding tribute, sometimes launching punitive expeditions to keep them in check. They even constructed sections of what would later be known as the Great Wall, though these were often earthen ramparts rather than the later Ming stone structures, meant to demarcate territory and control nomadic movements. The Jin saw the Mongols and other steppe peoples as barbarians, useful as occasional mercenaries, but ultimately a nuisance to be managed. They probably never imagined those barbarians were about to manage them permanently. Your motivations for targeting the Jin are complex, and historians still argue whether the primary driver was a desire for revenge, economic necessity, strategic ambition, or a combination of all three. There was certainly a history of grievances. The Jin had previously supported rivals of the Mongols and were responsible for the humiliating execution of one of your ancestors, Ambagai Khan, who was reputedly nailed to a wooden donkey. Revenge was a powerful motivator in Mongol culture. Economically, the Mongols desired the riches of the south: silks, grain, metal goods, and luxury items that the steppe could not produce. Strategically, a conquered or vassalized Jin would secure your southern flank and provide vast resources for further campaigns. And perhaps, simply put, you, Genghis Khan, the universal ruler, felt it was your destiny, ordained by the eternal blue sky Tengri, to rule the world. And the Jin were just the first major empire in the way. No biggie, just world domination on the to-do list. In 1211, the storm breaks. You lead your Mongol warriors south. The Jin, confident behind their fortifications and in their numerical superiority, are initially dismissive, but your army is unlike anything they've faced before. Your horsemen flow around fortified positions like water, avoiding costly direct assaults on major cities initially. You target the countryside, disrupting agriculture, seizing supplies, and isolating the cities. Your tactics emphasize speed, maneuverability, and devastating archery. The Mongol composite bow, wielded by expert horse archers, outranges many Jin weapons and inflicts terrible casualties. You employ feigned retreats, a classic steppe tactic, luring Jin forces into ambushes where they are encircled and annihilated. A critical early test comes at the Battle of Yehuling, or Badgermouth Pass, in 1211. This pass was a key strategic gateway through the mountains to the Jin heartland. The Jin commander, Wanyan, has a massive army, significantly outnumbering your forces. He makes the classic mistake of overconfidence and poor deployment, stretching his forces too thinly. Your General Macaulay, one of your most trusted commanders, leads a daring charge that shatters the Jin lines. The result is a catastrophic defeat for the Jin, with immense losses. The psychological impact is huge. The myth of Jin invincibility is broken. It's like watching the school bully suddenly get a thumping from the new kid. Everyone else starts to wonder. However, the campaign is not a walkover. While your Mongols excel in open battle, taking heavily fortified cities presents a new challenge. Early on, you lack sophisticated siege technology and expertise. Your warriors might surround a city, cut off its supplies, and try to induce surrender. But breaching high walls defended by crossbows and catapults is a bloody and often futile business. This is where your pragmatism and adaptability shine. You quickly learn. You recruit captured Chinese engineers and defectors who understand siege warfare. Soon, your army is employing siege towers, battering rams, catapults, traction trebuchets at first, later the more powerful counterweight trebuchets, and even diverting rivers to flood cities or cut off water supplies. You also master psychological warfare, offering terms of surrender, but making terrifying examples of cities that resist, the tales of which spread fear far and wide. Sometimes, you'd even drive captured civilians in front of your troops during an assault, a brutal but effective tactic. The Jin, for their part, are caught in a difficult position. Their armies, while large, are often composed of diverse ethnic groups with questionable loyalty. Their leadership is sometimes indecisive or plagued by court intrigue. They are defending a vast territory, and your mobile forces can strike anywhere, forcing them to disperse their strength. As you penetrate deeper into Jin territory, the landscape changes. You encounter farmlands, villages, and cities far more densely populated than anything on the steppe. The sheer scale of the Jin Empire is both a prize and a logistical challenge. Your warriors, used to the open plains, have to adapt to fighting in closer quarters, in unfamiliar terrain. But adapt they do. The first major campaign against the Jin lasts for several years, a brutal learning curve, but one that transforms your Mongol army from a purely nomadic force into one capable of challenging and ultimately dismantling established sedentary empires. The uncivilized nomads are proving to be very quick studies in the art of imperial conquest. While your campaigns against the Jin dynasty in northern China are grinding on, a years-long struggle of sieges, battles, and the slow assimilation of new territories, your gaze, Genghis Khan, is also drawn westward. You're not just a conqueror, you're also keenly aware of the importance of trade. The burgeoning Mongol Empire needs outlets for its goods, mostly horses, furs, and perhaps some plundered finery and inlets for the products of more settled civilizations. To your west lies the Khwarezmian Empire, a vast and wealthy sultanate stretching across Persia, Transoxiana, modern-day Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, and parts of present-day Afghanistan and Turkmenistan. Under its ruler, Shah Muhammad II, it's a major power in the Islamic world, controlling key segments of the Silk Road. Initially, you seem to have envisioned peaceful trade and diplomatic relations. After all, there's enough world out there for everyone to get rich. Right. Well, maybe not that much world. You dispatch a trade caravan, reportedly consisting of several hundred merchants, mostly Muslims, with a large consignment of goods, along with envoys carrying a letter to Shah Muhammad. Your message, according to some sources, proposes a treaty of peace and commerce, addressing the Shah as an equal, the ruler of the West, while you are the ruler of the East. It's a standard diplomatic opening, or so you might think. However, when the caravan reaches the Khwarezmian frontier city of Otrar, its governor, a man named Inalchuk, who happens to be an uncle of Shah Muhammad, grows suspicious. He accuses the merchants of being spies, a charge that might not have been entirely baseless, as merchants often gathered intelligence. Inalchuk, perhaps seeking to curry favor with the Shah or simply out of greed, orders the merchants executed and their goods seized. One camel driver reportedly escapes the Otrar massacre and makes his way back to Mongolia to report the disaster. This is a well-documented historical fact, the Otrar incident of 1218, and it will prove to be an incredibly costly mistake for the Khwarezmian Empire. You are, to put it mildly, displeased. This isn't just a trade deal gone sour. It's a profound insult to your authority and a violation of diplomatic norms. The protection of envoys and merchants was a sacred principle for you. You send a second delegation, this time directly to Shah Muhammad, demanding that Inalchuk be handed over for punishment and the stolen goods compensated. The Shah, in an act of monumental arrogance and folly, not only refuses but also has the chief Mongol envoy killed and the beards of his companions shaved off, a grave insult. He essentially double-dared the Khan of Khans. Bad move, Shah. Very bad move. Your reaction is swift and terrible. The secret history of the Mongols describes you ascending a mountain, removing your hat, baring your chest, and praying to the eternal blue sky for 3 days and nights, seeking strength and justice. Whether this ritual display was for public consumption or a genuine spiritual moment, the outcome is the same, a decision to unleash the full might of the Mongol war machine against Khwarezmia. Historians still argue whether your initial intent was a full-scale annihilation of the Khwarezmian Empire or a more limited punitive expedition to avenge the Otrar incident and secure your trade routes. Whatever the initial plan, the campaign rapidly escalates into one of the most devastating wars of the 13th century. In 1219, you mobilize an enormous army, perhaps numbering between 100,000 and 150,000 warriors, though exact numbers are always tricky with historical sources. This force includes not only your battle-hardened Mongols, but also allied Turkic peoples and, significantly, those Chinese siege engineers and specialists you acquired during the Jin campaigns. Remember them. Their skills are about to be in high demand. Shah Muhammad, despite possessing a numerically larger army, makes a critical strategic blunder. He disperses his forces, choosing to defend individual cities rather than meeting you in a decisive field battle. This plays directly into your hands. Your army, guided by brilliant generals like Subutai and Jebe, and with your sons Jochi, Chagatai, Ogedei, and Tolui leading major columns, advances on Khwarezmia in a multi-pronged assault, a vast strategic encirclement designed to confuse and overwhelm the enemy. You use intelligence gathered from merchants and defectors, exploit local rivalries, and employ relentless speed and deception. The city of Otrar is one of the first to fall. After a siege of several months, Inalchuk is captured. His fate is gruesome. Legend has it that you ordered molten silver to be poured into his eyes and ears, a symbolic punishment for his greed and his refusal to listen. Other major cities soon follow. Bukhara, a renowned center of Islamic learning and culture, is besieged. After its outer defenses fall, the citadel holds out. When it's finally taken, the city is sacked, many of its inhabitants massacred, and its great mosque reportedly used as a stable. You yourself are said to have entered the mosque, climbed the pulpit, and declared yourself the flail of God, sent to punish them for their sins. A bit dramatic, perhaps, but it certainly got the message across. Samarkand, one of the jewels of Central Asia, a city famed for its beauty and wealth, surrenders after a short siege, though a contingent of defenders in its citadel resist fiercely. The city is largely emptied, its artisans and skilled workers often spared and either enslaved or incorporated into Mongol service, while tens of thousands of others are killed. The Mongols systematically destroy irrigation systems, turning fertile farmlands into wasteland, a tactic designed to break the economic backbone of the region and prevent any future resurgence. Shah Muhammad II, meanwhile, panics. Instead of rallying his forces, he flees westward, pursued relentlessly by a Mongol detachment under Subutai and Jebe, a chase that becomes legendary for its speed and reach, covering thousands of miles. The Shah finds no refuge in his own empire, his authority crumbling before him. He eventually dies a miserable death from pleurisy on a desolate island in the Caspian Sea in early 1221, a broken man whose empire is being systematically dismantled. His son, Jalal al-Din Mangburni, continues a desperate resistance for several years, but the Khwarezmian state is effectively shattered. The invasion of Khwarezmia is a brutal, lightning-fast campaign that leaves a trail of devastation. Cities that resist are often razed to the ground, their populations massacred with an efficiency that shocks even the war-torn 13th century. It's not just about conquest, it's about making an example, instilling terror, and ensuring that no one will dare to defy the Mongol Khan again. The psychological impact on the Islamic world is profound, a trauma that will resonate for generations. For you, Genghis Khan, it's a stunning success. You have avenged the Otrar insult, destroyed a major rival, opened up the pathways to Persia and beyond, and acquired vast new territories and resources. The storm from the east has well and truly arrived, and it has changed the map of the world. The utter ruin of the Khwarezmian Empire, cities like Samarkand and Bukhara left as smoldering testaments to your wrath. Genghis Khan wasn't just a result of overwhelming numbers or sheer brutality. It was a terrifying demonstration of a new kind of warfare, a highly mobile, disciplined, and adaptable military doctrine that you had perfected. Your battlefield genius lay in understanding the strengths of your people and their environment, and then systematically refining them into an almost unstoppable force. So, how exactly did you and your Mongols conquer so much, so fast? It wasn't magic, though it might have seemed that way to your shell-shocked enemies. It was a combination of incredible skill, innovative tactics, and ruthless efficiency. At the very heart of your military dominance is the Mongol horse and the Mongol warrior's relationship with it. From early childhood, every Mongol, male and female, learned to ride almost as soon as they could walk. You live in the saddle, the Mongol pony. Though smaller than the war horses of many sedentary armies, is a marvel of endurance, capable of surviving on sparse grazing and covering vast distances in harsh climates. Each warrior typically travels with a string of 3 to 5 horses, allowing them to switch mounts frequently, ensuring fresh steeds for battle or long pursuits. and giving your armies a strategic mobility that few could match. It's like having a fleet of all-terrain vehicles that refuel themselves. Then there's the iconic Mongol composite bow. This isn't your granddad's longbow. Made from laminated layers of wood, horn, and sinew, it's relatively short, ideal for use from horseback, but incredibly powerful. A mainstream historical fact is that these bows could achieve a range of over 350 yards in the hands of a skilled archer, significantly further than many contemporary bows. Your warriors train relentlessly, able to shoot with deadly accuracy in any direction, even backwards at a gallop, the famed Parthian shot. Though you Mongols perfected it. They carry quivers filled with different types of arrows, heavy arrows for punching through armor, lighter arrows for long-range harassment, and even whistling arrows used for signaling. Imagine facing a hailstorm of these projectiles, delivered by riders who seem to materialize from the horizon, unleash their deadly volleys, and then vanish before you can effectively retaliate. Your army isn't a homogeneous mass either. You effectively utilize both light and heavy cavalry. The bulk of your forces are light horse archers, prized for their speed and ranged firepower. They scout, screen the main army, harass the enemy's flanks, and crucially, execute the devastating feigned retreat. This tactic, known as the Mengudai, involves your light cavalry engaging the enemy, then appearing to break and flee in disarray. It's a carefully choreographed performance designed to lure overconfident or undisciplined enemy formations into pursuing. Once the enemy is strung out and disorganized, they run headlong into an ambush, often set by your heavy cavalry or other waiting units. It's an old step trick, but you elevate it to an art form. Your heavy cavalry, clad in lamellar armor of leather or iron scales and wielding lances, swords, and maces, deliver the decisive shock attacks, crashing into enemy lines already weakened and demoralized by archery and maneuver. One of your signature grand tactics is the Tulugma, or standard sweep, a vast encirclement maneuver. Using your army's superior mobility, your forces would outflank an enemy army, sometimes sending detachments on wide sweeps that could take days to appear in the enemy's rear, effectively surrounding them. Caught in this corral, the enemy is then subjected to relentless attacks from all sides, a disorienting and terrifying experience. Historians still argue whether the precise execution of such complex, large-scale maneuvers was meticulously planned by you and your generals, or if it relied more on the initiative of subordinate commanders deeply imbued with your general strategic principles. Either way, it worked with terrifying consistency. None of this would be possible without excellent intelligence and reconnaissance. You place enormous emphasis on knowing the enemy and the terrain. Your scouts, or Jerby, are your eyes and ears, fanning out far ahead of the main army, gathering information on enemy movements, identifying water sources, and assessing fortifications. This intelligence is relayed rapidly back to you through your developing communication system, which we'll touch on more later, allowing you to make informed decisions and adapt your plans. You don't just blunder into battle. You choose your engagements carefully, ideally on ground that favors your cavalry. You're basically the original advocate of know your enemy, know yourself, and your data plan better be unlimited for all those scout reports. And let's not forget psychological warfare. You understand that breaking an enemy's will to fight is just as important as defeating them in battle. The tales of destruction from Khwarazm, the calculated massacres of cities that resisted, the pyramids of skulls. These stories, though sometimes exaggerated by chroniclers, are deliberately allowed to spread. It's a brutal form of PR, designed to terrify potential opponents into submission without a fight. You often offer terms of surrender before a siege. Submit, pay tribute, and your city will be spared. Resist, and face annihilation. Many choose the former. It's a grim choice, but in the face of your reputation, often a pragmatic one. Underpinning all these tactical elements is the iron discipline instilled in your army. Remember that decimal system and the harsh punishments for disobedience, and the sophisticated system of signals, flags, drums, horns, and whistling arrows, used to coordinate troop movements over the din and chaos of battle. Large formations can wheel, advance, retreat, and concentrate their fire with a level of precision that often bewilders more traditionally organized opponents. Your genius lies in taking the raw elements of steppe warfare, horsemanship, archery, mobility, and forging them through organization, discipline, and strategic vision into a coherent and devastatingly effective military system. You are not just a barbarian chief leading a horde. You are a military innovator, a grand strategist, the master of mobile warfare. Your mastery of mobile warfare, Genghis Khan, and the disciplined terror it unleashed allowed you to shatter empires from the Yellow Sea to the Caspian. But conquering territory is one thing. Holding it and building a lasting imperial structure is quite another. An army, no matter how effective, needs a society to support it, and a society needs rules. As your dominion swells to include not just Mongols, but also Tanguts, Jurchens, Khitans, Uyghurs, Persians, and myriad other peoples, you recognize the urgent need for a unifying code of conduct, a framework that can bring order to the chaos of conquest and knit together these disparate groups. This understanding gives rise to the Yasa, also known as Yasak or Jasag, your great law. It's your attempt to legislate an empire into existence, moving beyond ad hoc commands to a more permanent system of governance. Think of it as the ultimate terms and conditions update for a massive, newly merged multinational corporation, except the penalties for non-compliance are a lot more severe than losing your account access. The Yasa isn't something you just dream up one night after a particularly heavy meal of boiled mutton. It seems to have evolved over time, a codification of existing Mongol customs, your own decrees issued over years of leadership, and legal principles borrowed or adapted from peoples you encountered, like the Uyghurs, who had a more established written culture. The 1206 Kurultai, where you were proclaimed Genghis Khan, is often cited as a key moment for the formal promulgation of at least parts of the Yasa. A significant mainstream historical fact is that no complete, original text of the Yasa has ever been discovered. Our knowledge of it is pieced together from fragments and summaries found in later historical accounts, primarily from Persian, Chinese, and Armenian chroniclers writing about the Mongols. This means some provisions are well attested, while others are more speculative. It's like trying to reconstruct a complex instruction manual when you only have a few random pages, some of which are coffee-stained. So, what was actually in this legendary code from the available sources? We can glean a set of principles and prohibitions designed to ensure loyalty, maintain order, and regulate various aspects of life within your burgeoning empire. Absolute obedience and loyalty to you, the great Khan, and your successors was paramount. Many of the military regulations we've already touched upon, the decimal organization, the strict discipline, the duties of commanders and soldiers were likely enshrined in the Yasa. It aimed to stamp out the internecine warfare that had plagued the Mongols for centuries. Fighting between Mongols was strictly forbidden, with severe penalties. The Yasa sought to turn that aggressive energy outward towards the enemies of the empire. The regulation of hunting, particularly the great annual hunt, the Nurj, was also a matter of state law, not just a food-gathering exercise or military training. It was a vital communal activity that reinforced social cohesion and your authority. The Yasa reportedly included provisions for religious tolerance, a striking feature of your rule. It decreed that leaders of all religions, Buddhists, Christians, Muslims, Taoists, were to be respected and, importantly, exempted them and their establishments from taxation and public service. This wasn't necessarily born from a modern, enlightened understanding of religious freedom, but more from a pragmatic desire to win the support, or at least the acquiescence of diverse subject populations, and perhaps a traditional steppe belief that all religions held some power or truth. We'll delve more into this religious policy later. Social conduct was also addressed. Adultery was often punishable by death, as was sodomy. Theft, especially of livestock like horses, was a capital offense, understandable in a society where horses were life, lying, betrayal, and sorcery that harmed others were also severely punished. The Yasa emphasized truthfulness and keeping one's word. One fascinating aspect is the reported inviolability of envoys and ambassadors. Given your own catastrophic experience with the Khwarezmian Shah's treatment of your envoys, remember the Otrar incident. It's no surprise this became a cornerstone of Mongol international law. Mess with the messenger, and you mess with the Khan. Trade and commerce, vital for the empire's prosperity, also received attention. The Yasa is said to have included provisions for the safety of merchants and caravans, possibly standardizing weights and measures and punishing those who engaged in fraudulent trade practices. Some scholars suggest it even contained rudimentary environmental laws, such as prohibitions against urinating or washing clothes directly in rivers or springs during thunderstorms, possibly rooted in ancient shamanistic beliefs about not angering the spirits of nature, but also having practical benefits for hygiene. Historians still argue whether the Yasa was intended as a comprehensive legal system to replace all existing local laws in conquered territories, or if it was primarily a code for the Mongol people themselves and for the administration of the empire, allowing subject peoples to retain many of their own customs and laws as long as they didn't conflict with Mongol authority or the overarching principles of the Yasa. Enforcement of the Yasa was, by all accounts, strict and often brutal. Punishments were severe, designed to deter wrongdoing and maintain an iron grip on a vast and potentially unruly empire. There was little room for leniency. Justice was swift and often public. Some sources even hint that certain aspects of the Yasa, perhaps the most sacred or politically sensitive ones, were kept secret, recorded on scrolls guarded by the highest nobles, adding to their mystique and authority. It wasn't just a set of laws. It was an expression of your will, the divinely sanctioned order for your world-spanning empire. It aimed to create a new imperial Mongol identity, a disciplined society where every individual knew their place and their duty, from the lowest herder to the highest general, all united in service to the Khan and the empire. While its direct textual lineage is debated, the spirit of the Yasa, its emphasis on discipline, loyalty, and a unified order, undeniably shaped the Mongol Empire for generations. With the Yasa providing a blueprint for imperial order, you, Genghis Khan, now face the monumental task of imposing that order upon the vast, fractured landscapes of Central Asia and Persia. Still reeling from the shockwaves of your Khwarezmian campaign, Shah Muhammad II is dead, his empire shattered, but resistance, like stubborn desert weeds, still sprouts. The primary thorn in your side is the Shah's son, Jalal al-Din Mangburni. He's a figure straight out of an epic poem, courageous, resourceful, and utterly determined to avenge his father and reclaim his inheritance. He rallies a significant force in what is now Afghanistan and eastern Iran, and for a time, he actually manages to give your generals a run for their money. Imagine the audacity after witnessing the fate of his father's empire. He still squares up to the Mongol war machine. That's either incredibly brave, or he just really didn't learn from other people's mistakes. Jalal al-Din even inflicts a rare defeat on a Mongol detachment at the Battle of Parwan in 1221, a victory that briefly ignites hope among the subjugated populations. This, of course, cannot be tolerated. You dispatch reinforcements and, according to some accounts, take personal command of the pursuit. The cat and mouse game leads to the Indus River. Here, in late 1221, at the climactic Battle of the Indus, Jalal al-Din's forces are trapped against the riverbank and decisively crushed by your army. A well-attested historical fact is that Jalal al-Din, seeing the battle lost, made a dramatic escape by leaping his horse from a cliff into the Indus River and swimming to safety in India, leaving his harem and treasures behind. It's a cinematic moment, but it marks the effective end of his ability to seriously challenge Mongol dominance in Persia, though he would continue to be a nuisance in India and later in the Caucasus for several more years. His defiance, however, serves as a stark reminder that conquering territory is just the first step. Pacifying it is a much longer, bloodier affair. While you are dealing with Jalal al-Din, your other generals are fanning out, consolidating Mongol control across Persia and pushing into the Caucasus region, the mountainous lands of Georgia and Armenia. The legendary duo, Subutai and Jebi, fresh from their pursuit of Shah Muhammad, embark on one of history's most audacious cavalry expeditions. Their mission is initially reconnaissance in force, but it turns into a nearly 3-year, 8,000-kilometer circular raid around the Caspian Sea. They smash through the armies of Georgia and the Alan tribes, cross the Caucasus Mountains, a feat in itself, especially with an army, and then burst onto the Kipchak steppes of what is now southern Russia and Ukraine. Here, they defeat a coalition of Kipchak Turkic tribes and Russian princes at the Battle of the Kalka River in 1223, before eventually looping back east to rejoin your main forces. This great raid is not about permanent conquest at this stage, but it's a terrifying calling card, gathering intelligence, mapping new territories, and demonstrating the incredible reach and striking power of your armies. It's like they took the scenic route home, with a bit of light pillaging and empire toppling along the way. Back in the core territories of the former Khwarezmian Empire, Transoxiana and Khorasan, your focus shifts from outright destruction to establishing a more permanent Mongol administration. This is where the principles of the Yasa are meant to take root. You appoint military governors, known as Darugachi or Baskaks, in major cities and regions. Their job is to maintain order, ensure the collection of tribute and taxes, and conscript locals for labor or auxiliary military service. Census taking becomes a crucial tool of empire, allowing you to assess the resources, both human and material, of your new domains. It's a far cry from the freewheeling nomadic life. This business of counting heads and measuring grain, but it's essential for sustaining your war machine and administering your conquests. Historians still argue about the nature and effectiveness of this early Mongol administration in Central Asia. Was it purely exploitative and brutal, designed only to extract wealth and resources? Or did it, even in these early stages, contain elements aimed at restoring some level of stability and facilitating trade once an area was subdued? The evidence is mixed. Certainly, regions that resisted fiercely continued to suffer devastation. Cities that surrendered more readily might see some local elites co-opted into the Mongol system, allowed to retain a measure of local authority under the watchful eye of the Darugachi. The goal is clear: to integrate these new territories into your empire, to make them productive, and above all, to ensure they pose no future threat. The Yasa provides the legal and ideological framework for this, emphasizing obedience to your authority and imposing a harsh peace. The impact on Central Asian societies is profound and multifaceted. Some areas experience catastrophic depopulation and economic collapse due to the initial invasions and subsequent repressions. Irrigation systems, vital for agriculture in these arid lands, are often destroyed or fall into disrepair. Yet, in other areas, once Mongol control is firmly established, a degree of order returns. Trade routes, though perhaps shifted, begin to function again, sometimes even more securely under the Mongol peace than before. As merchants are protected by your decrees and the fear of your retribution, you are creating a vast, interconnected zone. But the price of entry for many is devastatingly high. After several grueling years campaigning in the West, from 1219 to around 1223 or 1224, you decide it's time to return to your Mongolian homeland. You've shattered a major empire, expanded your domains dramatically, and set in motion the structures for long-term control. You leave trusted generals and your sons to oversee the ongoing consolidation of power in Persia and the newly subjugated Western territories. Your work in the West is far from over. It will take decades for Mongol rule to be fully entrenched. But your immediate attention is needed elsewhere. The Tangut kingdom of Shishya, on your empire's eastern flank, had betrayed an earlier allegiance, and that, according to the unwritten rules of your world and the explicit rules of your Yasa, cannot go unpunished. The war machine needs to roll again, but this time, it's turning back towards the rising sun as you, Genghis Khan, turn your attention back east, leaving your generals to tighten the Mongol grip on the sprawling territories of Central Asia and Persia. It's worth pausing to dissect two of the most fearsome and effective instruments of your imperial expansion: your highly developed siegecraft and your deliberate use of psychological terror. These aren't just byproducts of war, they are refined methodologies, honed through brutal experience in campaigns like those against the Jin and the Khwarezmians. You quickly realized that while your cavalry could dominate on the open field, empires are built on cities, and cities have walls. For a nomadic force, accustomed to the vast emptiness of the steppe, learning to crack these fortified nuts was a steep learning curve, but one you mastered with terrifying alacrity. Initially, your warriors, superb horsemen and archers though they were, could do little more than blockade a well-defended city, hoping to starve it into submission. This was time-consuming and not always effective, but you were never one to let a problem fester. Your solution was brutally pragmatic. You systematically incorporated the knowledge of those you conquered, captured Chinese engineers during the Jin campaigns, and later Persian and Arab engineers from the Khwarezmian lands were not always put to the sword if they possessed valuable skills. Instead, They were organized into special units, their expertise harnessed to build and operate the complex machinery of siege warfare. It's a rather grim form of talent acquisition. Conquer, identify skills, assimilate, repeat. Your army became a mobile university of destructive arts. The arsenal of siege engines at your disposal grows impressively sophisticated. You have catapults of various types initially, the simpler traction trebuchets, powered by teams of men pulling ropes, which could hurl substantial stones. Later, and crucially, your forces adopted and expertly employed the more powerful counterweight trebuchet, a mainstream historical fact being that this technology, likely learned from Middle Eastern engineers, allowed for the launching of much heavier projectiles with greater accuracy and range, capable of smashing down substantial fortifications. Picture massive wooden arms, powered by tons of falling counterweights, flinging boulders, pots of flaming naphtha, an early form of Greek fire, or even, gruesomely, diseased animal carcasses, or the severed heads of captured enemies into besieged cities to spread disease and despair. Beyond catapults, your siege parks include towering, wheeled siege towers, often covered with fresh animal hides to protect them from flaming arrows, allowing your warriors to reach the top of enemy walls. Heavy battering rams, shielded by reinforced roofs, pound relentlessly at city gates. Giant crossbows, or ballistae, launch enormous bolts or javelins. And then there's the quieter, more insidious work of sappers and miners who dig tunnels beneath enemy walls, either to create a breach by collapsing the foundations or to sneak troops into the city. You also become adept at manipulating water sources, diverting rivers to flood cities or cut off their water supply, as was seen in some Khwarezmian sieges. It's a multifaceted approach, a relentless application of force and ingenuity. Your engineers would sometimes even build platforms overlooking city walls, from which to bombard the defenders with impunity, essentially creating their own high ground. Talk about an aggressive HOA dispute. Coupled with this technological prowess is your systematic use of psychological terror, a calculated policy designed to break the will of your enemies and save Mongol lives and resources in the long run. This isn't about random, uncontrolled savagery, though the suffering it inflicted was immeasurable. It's a deliberate strategy. The infamous surrender or die ultimatum becomes standard procedure. Before besieging a city, your envoys would deliver the terms: submit to Mongol rule, pay tribute, provide supplies and auxiliary troops, and your city and its people might be spared. Resist and face utter annihilation. It's a stark choice, and the consequences of defiance are made horrifyingly clear. If a city resists and is taken by storm, the retribution is often methodical and brutal. Massacres of the population are common, sometimes with a chilling selectivity. Artisans, engineers, and young women might be spared for servitude and assimilated into the Mongol war machine or populace, while the rest, particularly the ruling classes and fighting men, are slaughtered. The chronicles are filled with accounts of pyramids of skulls erected as grisly monuments to Mongol victory, of entire city populations wiped out. Historians still argue whether the primary motivation behind these massacres was a cold, strategic calculation of psychological warfare, a deep-seated cultural imperative for revenge for any resistance or insult, or simply a pragmatic, if brutal, method of dealing with large, potentially rebellious populations when the Mongol occupying forces were often numerically inferior in vast conquered territories. The terror is amplified by your deliberate efforts to spread the news of these atrocities. Survivors are sometimes allowed to escape from a ravaged city, carrying with them tales of horror that would paralyze other cities with fear, making them more likely to submit without a fight. You understand the power of rumor and propaganda. The fear of the Mongols often precedes the arrival of your armies, doing half your work for you. It's like the ultimate negative Yelp review, except instead of a 1-star rating, it's "they literally destroyed our entire civilization." This policy, while morally repugnant by modern standards, and, indeed, by the standards of many contemporary chroniclers who were horrified by it, is undeniably effective from a military perspective. Cities increasingly capitulate, rather than face the well-advertised consequences of resistance. This saves you the time, resources, and Mongol casualties involved in protracted sieges. It's a grim calculus of conquest, where the suffering of one city becomes a tool to ensure the submission of many others. The combination of sophisticated siegecraft that left no wall truly secure, and a reputation for merciless terror that left no heart entirely brave, becomes a devastatingly effective 1-2 punch in your arsenal of imperial expansion. Now, imagine you, Genghis Khan, having engineered sophisticated siege tactics and weaponized fear itself to carve out this colossal empire. You've got territories stretching from the frigid forests of Siberia to the warm plains of Persia, from the shores of the Pacific to the approaches of Europe. That's an awful lot of real estate to manage. How do you ensure your decrees from Karakorum, your newly established capital, reach your generals campaigning in distant lands? How do you receive timely intelligence about a rebellion brewing hundreds, even thousands, of miles away? You can't just send a text message or hop on a Zoom call. Your solution is another masterpiece of pragmatic organization, less overtly brutal than a trebuchet, but just as vital for imperial cohesion, the Urtua, more commonly known as the YAM system. This is your Imperial Postal Service, your information superhighway, and it's going to revolutionize communication across Eurasia. The sheer scale of your domain makes rapid and reliable communication an absolute necessity. Military commands need to be disseminated. Intelligence reports from your far-flung scouts remember the Jerby must reach you swiftly. Administrative orders have to be conveyed to your governors, the Darugachi, and tribute and taxes need to be managed. Without an efficient system, your empire risks fracturing under its own immense weight, like a giant souffle that just can't hold its shape. While various forms of relay systems existed in earlier empires, you and your successor, Ogadai, will formalize and expand the YAM into an unprecedented network, a true logistical marvel. Historians still argue whether the YAM was an entirely novel Mongol creation or a highly efficient scaling up and militarization of pre-existing Chinese or Central Asian postal systems. Regardless of its precise origins, under your direction, it becomes a defining feature of the Mongol Empire. Picture this: a vast network of relay stations, the Urtu, strategically established along all major routes throughout your empire. These stations are typically spaced about 25 to 30 miles apart, roughly the distance a horse can gallop at speed before needing rest. Each station is essentially a fortified outpost, manned and provisioned to support the imperial messengers. They are stocked with hundreds of fresh horses, food for riders and their mounts, comfortable lodging for the messengers, and the necessary staff to maintain operations. It's like a string of 5-star motels for very tired, very important mailmen on very fast horses. When an imperial messenger, an ulachi or ilchi, arrives at an urtu, often riding day and night. He presents his credentials, gets a fresh horse or several, a quick meal if needed, and is off again at full gallop. This system allows official messages to travel at incredible speeds. A mainstream historical fact is that messengers using the YAM system could cover distances of 150 to 200 miles, or even more, in a single 24-hour period, an astonishing feat for the pre-industrial era. Marco Polo, who traveled through the Mongol Empire much later, was deeply impressed by the efficiency and scale of the YAM. The riders themselves are figures of incredible endurance and dedication. They are chosen for their hardiness and loyalty. They ride in all weather, through dangerous terrain, often carrying vital intelligence or urgent commands upon which the fate of armies or entire regions might depend. To ensure their authority and facilitate their passage, official messengers carry a paisa, a tablet of authority, usually made of wood, bronze, silver, or gold, depending on the rank and urgency of the mission. This paisa, often inscribed in multiple languages, grants the bearer the right to demand fresh horses, provisions, and assistance from local officials and the staff of the YAM stations. Woe betide anyone who obstructs an official rider carrying a paisa. The penalties, as dictated by your yasa, would be severe. It's the ultimate VIP pass of the 13th century. The impact of the YAM on governance is transformative. It allows you to maintain a surprisingly centralized command structure despite the mind-boggling distances involved. Orders from the imperial center can reach the furthest corners of the empire in weeks rather than months. Intelligence about local conditions, troop movements, or potential threats can flow back just as quickly. This rapid exchange of information is crucial for coordinating military campaigns, suppressing rebellions before they can escalate, and ensuring that your governors are implementing your policies. It's the nervous system of your empire, transmitting signals across its vast body. Think of the advantage this gives you over your enemies, many of whom are operating with much slower, less reliable communication networks. You know what they're doing, or what they did, long before they know you know. While the YAM is primarily designed for official government and military business, its benefits spill over into other areas. The security provided along these routes, patrolled and maintained for the imperial post, also makes travel safer for merchants and other travelers who might be granted permission to use its facilities, perhaps for a fee, or if their trade is deemed strategically important. This contributes significantly to the phenomenon later known as the Pax Mongolica, or Mongol Peace, a period where trade and travel across Eurasia flourished under the umbrella of your unified empire. If you knew the road was safe and there'd be a decent place to get a fresh horse and a bowl of arag, you'd be more inclined to make that long-distance business trip, wouldn't you? Of course. Maintaining such an extensive system is a massive undertaking. The burden of supplying horses, provisions, and manpower for the thousands of YAM stations falls heavily on the local settled populations in the regions through which the routes pass. Each station might require hundreds of horses to be kept in reserve. This is a constant drain on local resources, often enforced rigorously by Mongol officials. It's another example of how the empire mobilizes the resources of conquered peoples to serve its own strategic ends. The YAM is a testament to your organizational genius and your understanding that an empire, like an army, marches not just on its stomach, but on its ability to communicate. It's the invisible sinew that binds your conquests together. Your empire, Genghis Khan, stitched together by military might and connected by the rapid-fire relays of the YAM system, is a kaleidoscope of cultures, languages, and significantly, religions. As your armies sweep across Asia, they encounter a bewildering array of faiths. There are the Nestorian Christians, prominent among tribes like your former allies and later rivals, the Karaites. There are Buddhists of various schools in Tangut among the Uyghurs, and in parts of China. Islam is deeply entrenched in Khwarezmia, Persia, and among many Turkic peoples. Taoism and Confucianism are foundational to Chinese society. Even older faiths like Manichaeism and Zoroastrianism still have their adherents. And of course, there's the indigenous shamanism of your own Mongol people, with its reverence for the eternal blue sky, Tengri, and the spirits of nature. Managing this spiritual diversity could have been a tinderbox, ready to ignite with fanatical resistance. Instead, your approach is remarkably and pragmatically tolerant. You yourself are a devout follower of Mongol shamanism. You consult shamans, observe traditional rituals, and believe your destiny and conquests are guided by the will of Tengri. The secret history often depicts you praying to Burkhan Khaldun, your sacred mountain, seeking guidance from the sky god. This personal faith, however, doesn't translate into an insistence that everyone else must believe as you do. In fact, one of the most striking and well-documented aspects of your rule, enshrined within your great law, the Yasa, remember those tax exemptions we touched upon, is a policy of religious tolerance. Clergy of all recognized faiths, be they Christian priests, Buddhist monks, Muslim imams, or Taoist sages, are generally exempted from taxation, military service, and forced labor. They are allowed to practice their religions openly and maintain their places of worship, as long as they pray for your health and the prosperity of the Mongol Empire. It's a pretty good deal, pray for the boss, and you don't pay taxes. Not bad for job security in the 13th century. What motivates this surprising open-mindedness from a man often depicted as an unrelenting conqueror? Historians still argue whether this tolerance stemmed from a genuine intellectual curiosity, a shrewd political pragmatism, a traditional step indifference to doctrinal specifics, or a belief that all paths might hold some spiritual truth or power useful to you. It was likely a cocktail of all these elements. Pragmatically, you understand that trying to impose a single religion on your vast and diverse empire would be a recipe for endless rebellion. It's far easier to govern if religious communities are pacified, even co-opted. By respecting their religious leaders and institutions, you reduce potential sources of opposition. Many nomadic empires before yours had shown a similar eclectic approach to the faiths of their subject sedentary populations. It was often simpler to let them be, as long as the tribute flowed and loyalty was assured. There's also evidence of your personal curiosity. You are known to have summoned leaders of different faiths to your court for discussions, or perhaps more accurately, for debates and to glean wisdom. One famous mainstream historical fact is your summoning of the elderly Taoist sage Qiu Chuji, also known as Master Cheng Chun, all the way from China to your camp in Central Asia near modern-day Afghanistan in 1222. You had heard of his reputation for wisdom and, perhaps, for possessing the secret to longevity, something all-powerful rulers seem to crave. Chang Chun made the arduous journey, and you reportedly had several long conversations with him. While he didn't offer you an elixir of immortality, much to your probable disappointment, as who wouldn't want to live forever when they're conquering the world, he did offer moral advice, and you, in turn, granted him and his Taoist sect special privileges. You weren't looking to convert to Taoism, or any other faith for that matter, but you seemed to believe that holy people, regardless of their specific creed, might possess special spiritual power or offer beneficial prayers. If their prayers could help ensure your victories or prolong your life, why not have them on your side? It's like collecting spiritual bonus points. This policy of tolerance, however, has its limits. It is not an endorsement of absolute religious freedom in the modern sense. The primary condition is unwavering loyalty to you and the Mongol state. Religious leaders are expected to use their influence to keep their communities peaceful and obedient. If any religious group or leader is suspected of fomenting rebellion or challenging Mongol authority, the response is swift and brutal, just as it would be for any other political opponent. The Yasa might protect religious practice, but it demands political submission above all. Furthermore, while you allow diverse faiths to coexist, you don't necessarily encourage active proselytizing if it leads to public disorder or conflict between different religious groups. The peace of the empire is paramount. You're not trying to start a religious debate club. You're trying to run an empire efficiently. The consequences of this religious policy are significant. It facilitates the administration of your diverse empire by minimizing religious conflict. It encourages the movement of people and ideas, as scholars, priests, and monks can travel more freely under Mongol protection. Many talented individuals from various religious backgrounds find service in your administration. Uyghur Buddhists are instrumental in developing the Mongol script and bureaucracy. Nestorian Christians and Muslims also serve in high positions. This contrasts sharply with the often violent religious persecution prevalent in other parts of the 13th century world, such as the Crusades in the Levant and Europe, or internal conflicts between different Christian or Muslim sects. Under the eternal blue sky of Tengri, as long as you acknowledge the Khan's earthly supremacy, you are largely free to seek your own path to the heavens. This practical approach to faith is another key, if often overlooked, ingredient in the complex recipe of your imperial success. Your pragmatic approach to religion, Genghis Khan, ensuring that the diverse faiths within your empire don't become a flashpoint for rebellion, is a testament to your statecraft. But even the most stable ship needs a clear line of succession for the captaincy, especially when that ship is a continent-spanning empire forged by a single, extraordinary individual. You are acutely aware that nomadic empires, historically, have a nasty habit of imploding once their charismatic founder shuffles off this mortal coil. The Xiongnu, the Turkic Khaganates, many fell prey to internal power struggles among ambitious heirs. You are determined that your legacy will endure, that the world you've conquered will remain under the dominion of your golden kin, your imperial family. This means tackling the thorny issue of who will succeed you as Great Khan. It's a decision that will shape the future of millions and the destiny of nations. Not exactly choosing who gets the bigger yurt. You have 4 sons by your principal wife, the wise and respected Birta. Remember her abduction by the Merkits and her astute advice. She's been a constant throughout your rise. Each son is a powerful figure in his own right, with his own strengths, weaknesses, and ambitions. There's the eldest, Yochi. His situation is complicated. He was born shortly after Berta was rescued from her Merkit captors, leading to persistent, whispered doubts about his true paternity. Is he your son, or the son of a Merkit? While you always publicly acknowledged Yoki as your own, This shadow hangs over him and provides ammunition for his rivals, particularly his fiery younger brother. Yochi is a capable military commander and has been assigned vast territories in the west, the lands that will eventually form the Golden Horde. However, his relationship with you has become strained, and he seems to prefer the distant steps of his appanage to the imperial court. Then comes Chagatai, your second son. He is known as a stern, unyielding man, a strict disciplinarian, and an acknowledged expert on the Yasa. He sees himself as its guardian, quick to point out any perceived infraction, even by his own brothers. Chagatai makes no secret of his doubts about Jochi's legitimacy and is often openly antagonistic towards him. He's not exactly the life of the party, but he's seen as a pillar of Mongol law and tradition. Your third son is Ogadai. He is, by most accounts, a very different character from his brothers. Genial, generous, known for his even temper and his ability to get along with people. Ogadai is perhaps less of a brilliant military strategist than Yoki or your youngest son, Tolui. But he is intelligent and possesses a crucial talent for compromise and consensus building. He's also known for his fondness for drink, a trait that worries you somewhat. But his affability makes him popular. He's the kind of guy who could probably mediate a dispute between a rock and a hard place and have them both feeling good about it. Finally, there is Tolui, your youngest son by Berta, a formidable warrior. Tolui is immensely popular with the army, having distinguished himself in numerous campaigns, particularly in the brutal sieges of the Khwarezmian War. According to Mongol tradition ultimogeniture, the youngest son often inherited the ancestral hearthland, in this case, Mongolia itself. Tolui is a strong contender, respected for his military prowess and his loyalty. The secret history of the Mongols gives a dramatic, if possibly embellished, account of how you address the succession. You gather your sons and key advisors for a kurultai, or a council meeting. The tension is palpable when you ask Yoki to speak first, as is his right as the eldest. Chagatai reportedly explodes, shouting, "When you tell Jochi to speak, are you not offering the succession to him? How can we let ourselves be ruled by this bastard son of a merkit?" It's a bombshell moment. Yochi, enraged, is said to have grabbed Chagatai by the collar, and they nearly come to blows before being separated. You, watching this fraternal strife, must feel a deep sense of foreboding. This is exactly the kind of division that could tear your empire apart. After the confrontation, and with Yoki's legitimacy openly challenged, his candidacy as your successor is effectively nullified, though he retains his western appanage. Joki, in fact, dies in early 1227, some months before your own passing, under circumstances that are somewhat mysterious, further complicating the succession, but removing one source of potential conflict. With Jochi out of the running for supreme leadership, the choice narrows. Chagatai, despite his legal expertise, is perhaps too rigid and confrontational to be a unifying figure. Tolui is a great general, but perhaps too focused on military matters and potentially too aligned with the traditionalist Mongol military elite. You ultimately choose Ogadai. In a speech recorded in the chronicles, you praise Ogadai's qualities of moderation and kindness, suggesting he is the one most likely to preserve the unity of the family and the empire. You ask him directly if he accepts the responsibility, and Ogadai, in his characteristic fashion, agrees, promising to uphold your laws and traditions. It's a mainstream historical fact that while you clearly designated Ogedei as your heir, his formal election as the second Great Khan by a Kurultai wouldn't occur until 1229, 2 years after your death, with Tolui serving as regent in the interim. However, your choice is made clear to all the key players before your final campaign. Historians still argue about the precise calculus behind your decision. Was Ogedei chosen primarily for his perceived ability to be a unifying force, a compromise candidate who wouldn't alienate powerful factions? Or did you see in his character essential qualities of leadership that transcended mere military skill or legalistic rigor? Perhaps you recognized that after an era of relentless conquest, the empire needed a ruler who could consolidate, administer, and ensure a degree of stability. While anointing a single great Khan, you also formalized the division of the empire into uluses, or territorial grants, for each of your surviving sons and other relatives. Yochi's line gets the western steppes. Chagatais receives Central Asia Transoxiana. Ogedei, in addition to being Great Khan, has lands in modern-day Xinjiang and Western Mongolia, and Tolui, as the youngest, inherits the Mongolian heartland. This is intended to provide for your descendants and give them domains to rule. But it also lays the foundation for the eventual fragmentation of the empire into distinct khanates. You warn your sons repeatedly about the dangers of discord, urging them to work together. Your greatest fear is that their ambitions and rivalries will unravel everything you've built. The choice of Ogedei is your best bet to hold it all together, at least for a while longer. With Ogedei designated as your successor and the future of your imperial lineage seemingly secured, you, Genghis Khan, might have been expected to enjoy a well-earned retirement, perhaps tending to your herds in the Mongolian heartland or engaging in philosophical debates with Taoist sages. But rest is not in your nature, especially when there's unfinished business, an act of defiance that, in your eyes, strikes at the very foundation of the order you've imposed upon the world. The Yasa, the Tangut kingdom of Xixia, nestled in the strategically important Gansu corridor on the edge of the Gobi Desert, had once sworn fealty to you. They had been your vassals. But during your long and arduous campaign against the Khwarezmian Empire, when you requested Tangut troops to bolster your forces, they not only refused but also, according to some sources, offered veiled insults and possibly even conspired with your enemies. The Jin. This is treachery of the highest order, a blatant violation of their oath, and it cannot go unpunished. It's personal, it's political, and it's a direct challenge to your authority as the Great Khan. So, in 1226, despite your advancing age, you are now in your 60s, and perhaps already feeling the stirrings of ill health. You gather your armies for one last great campaign. Your determination is absolute. The Tanguts must be made an example of. They had dared to mock the wolf when he was hunting other prey. Now the wolf has returned, and he is not amused. The Tangut kingdom, also known as Western Xia or Minyak, is no pushover. They are a proud and resilient people, predominantly Buddhist, with a sophisticated culture, their own unique script, and a series of well-fortified cities. They have experience fighting both the Jin and the Song dynasties of China. They know their terrain, a challenging mix of desert and mountains. This will be a tough, grinding war. As your forces pour into Xixia, you are, as always, leading from the front, or at least very near it, early in the campaign, during the winter of 1225-1226 while hunting wild asses. Your horse rears and throws you. It's a nasty fall for an old man, and you are badly bruised and shaken. Your commanders urge you to rest, to postpone the campaign. But you are implacable. You see the Tangut defiance as an ill omen and are convinced that to turn back now would be a sign of weakness. So, despite a raging fever and the lingering effects of the injury, you press on. It's this kind of iron will that has carried you from outcast boy to world conqueror. But now, it might also be hastening your end. The campaign is brutal, even by Mongol standards. City after city is besieged and falls. Lingzhou, a major Tangut stronghold, endures a fierce siege before being overwhelmed. The Mongols, fueled by your wrath, show little mercy. You systematically dismantle the Tangut state, capturing their fortresses, destroying their armies in the field, and devastating their agricultural lands. The Tanguts fight back with desperation, but against the full might of the Mongol war machine, now at the peak of its efficiency and still led by its founder. The outcome is inevitable. It's like watching a python slowly constrict its prey, methodical, relentless, and ultimately fatal. The final act is the siege of their capital, Zhongxing, modern-day Yinchuan, a large and well-defended city. The siege drags on through the spring and summer of 1227. The Tanguts endure starvation, bombardment, and repeated assaults. Meanwhile, your own health is failing. The injury from the fall, combined with the rigors of the campaign and perhaps an underlying illness, is taking its toll. A mainstream historical fact is that Genghis Khan died in August 1227 during the final stages of this campaign against Xixia before the capital city formally surrendered. The exact cause of your death remains a mystery, lost to the deliberately vague accounts of contemporary chroniclers. Was it the lingering effects of the fall typhus pneumonia? Some other ailment? Historians still argue, sifting through the cryptic clues in Persian, Chinese, and Mongol sources. But no definitive answer has emerged. It's one of history's great cold cases. Knowing your end is near, you issue your final chilling orders regarding the Tanguts. Because of their treachery and their stubborn resistance, the entire Tangut nation is to be annihilated. Their cities are to be razed, their people slaughtered, their very name and script erased from the face of the earth. It is a sentence of cultural genocide, a final, terrible expression of your wrath. You want to make them an example so terrifying that no one will ever again dare to betray the Mongols. It's a dark and brutal coda to a life of conquest. After your death, your commanders and sons keep your passing a closely guarded secret. They fear that news of your demise could throw the army into disarray or encourage the besieged Tanguts to fight on with renewed hope. The charade is maintained until Zhongxing finally capitulates. The Tangut emperor, tricked into surrendering with false promises of clemency, comes out of the city only to be executed. Then, your final orders are carried out with horrifying thoroughness. The population of the capital and other remaining Tangut centers are massacred. Xixia is systematically dismantled. Its unique script, its vibrant Buddhist culture, its very identity, all are targeted for obliteration. While it's debated whether every single Tangut was killed, the destruction is so comprehensive that the Tangut civilization effectively vanishes from history. A ghost kingdom haunting the desert sands. Your body is then carried back to Mongolia in a great, silent procession. Your death still concealed from the wider world until your homeland is reached. Legend has it that anyone encountered by the funeral cortege was killed to preserve the secret. You are buried, according to Mongol custom, in a secret, unmarked grave, probably somewhere near the sacred mountain Burkhan Khaldun, the location forever hidden to prevent desecration. The conqueror of the world returns to the earth, his final campaign a testament to his unyielding will and his capacity for terrible retribution. Your death, Genghis Khan, during the final obliteration of the Tangut kingdom, sends a silent shockwave through the Mongol world. The architect of the largest contiguous land empire in history is gone, yet the machine you built, the systems you put in place, and the sheer momentum of conquest ensure that your passing doesn't immediately herald collapse. Your final orders for Shisha are carried out with chilling precision, a grim epilogue to your reign. Then, the focus shifts to the future you so carefully tried to arrange. For 2 years, from 1227 to 1229, your youngest son Tolui, the respected warrior, serves as regent, holding the empire steady, a sort of imperial caretaker until the formalities of your will can be enacted. He does a solid job, no major meltdowns on his watch, which is pretty good considering the potential for a massive power vacuum. Then, in 1229, a great Kurultai is convened. It's here that your chosen heir, Ogadai, your genial and diplomatic third son, is formally acclaimed as the second great Khan. He reportedly makes a show of refusing the honor several times, a traditional Mongol display of humility, or perhaps he was genuinely daunted by the size of the sandals he had to fill before finally accepting the supreme Khatunship. With Ogadai on the throne in the newly developing capital of Karakoram, a city he will do much to build up from a collection of gyrs into a more permanent imperial center. The Mongol Empire gears up for its next phase. Ogadai is not his father. He lacks your raw, elemental force and perhaps some of your military genius, but he is intelligent, generally well-liked, and committed to upholding the Yasa and continuing your vision of a world empire. He's also known for his generosity, sometimes to a fault, liberally distributing wealth from the imperial coffers, which probably helped smooth over any lingering leadership anxieties among the Mongol nobility. Can't be too mad at the boss if he's always buying rounds of Arag for everyone. Under Ogadai, the conquests continue, almost as if you were still at the helm. The war against the Jin dynasty in northern China, a conflict you initiated, is prosecuted with renewed vigor. A mainstream historical fact is that by 1234, with the brilliant General Subutai, your old war dog, still going strong playing a key role, the Jin are utterly defeated, their emperor committing suicide, their territory fully absorbed into the Mongol domain. This is a monumental achievement, completing a task that had occupied you for years. But the war machine doesn't stop there. The gaze of the new great Khan and his ambitious relatives turns westward once more. In 1236, Ogadai launches a massive campaign into Europe, led by your grandson Batu, son of the late Jochi, and again guided by the tactical genius of Subutai. A colossal Mongol army, perhaps 150,000 strong, thunders across the Russian steppes. One by one, the Russian principalities, Ryazan, Vladimir, Kiev, are smashed, their cities sacked with the familiar Mongol efficiency. Kiev, the magnificent mother of Russian cities, is reduced to a smoking ruin in 1240. The wave of terror rolls on into Central Europe. In 1241, Mongol armies inflict devastating defeats on Polish and German knights at Legnica in Poland, and on the Hungarian army at Mohi in Hungary. Europe is gripped by panic, seeing the Mongols as a divine scourge, the apocalyptic hordes of Gog and Magog. It seems nothing can stop them. Then, unexpectedly, In late 1241 or early 1242, the Mongols turned back, withdrawing from Central Europe. The primary reason is the death of Genghis Khan himself in December 1241, possibly from alcohol-related illness. That fondness for drink finally catching up with him. Mongol tradition dictated that all Chinggisid princes had to return to Mongolia to elect a new great Khan. This recall, though driven by internal Mongol politics, inadvertently saves much of Western Europe from experiencing the full force of Mongol invasion. Close call. Europe. Very close call. While Batu is terrorizing Eastern Europe and founding what will become the Golden Horde, other parts of your vast Ulis system are also taking shape. Your son Chagatai rules over Central Asia, his Khanate becoming a bastion of traditional Mongol law. Persia and the Caucasus are under the control of Mongol governors, gradually being pacified and integrated. The sheer size of these domains means that local Chinggisid rulers are inevitably gaining more autonomy. The Yam system still functions, linking Karakoram to the far-flung regions, but the Great Khan's ability to micromanage affairs across such distances is limited. Historians still argue whether the eventual fragmentation of the Mongol Empire into distinct Khanates, the Golden Horde in Russia, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Yuan dynasty in China was an inevitable consequence of the Ulis system you designed, or if it was primarily driven by later rivalries and divergent local interests. You intended the Uluses to provide for your sons and to decentralize some administrative burdens while maintaining overall unity under the Great Khan. However, these vast territories, each with its unique challenges and opportunities, naturally begin to develop their own distinct characteristics and priorities. The bonds of kinship and the shared legacy of your conquests hold them together for a time. But the centrifugal forces of distance, culture, and personal ambition are constantly at play. Ogedei does his best to act as a unifying figure, promoting trade, building infrastructure like Karakoram, and enhancing the Yam, and attempting to create a more stable administrative framework for the empire. He understands that endless conquest alone cannot sustain the empire indefinitely. Yet, the very success of your family, the creation of multiple powerful Chinggisid princes ruling vast sub-empires, carries the seeds of future disunity. Rivalries between the lines of Jochi, Chagatai, Ogedei, and Tolui simmer beneath the surface, occasionally flaring up. Your legacy is secure in the sense that your descendants continue to rule over much of Eurasia for generations. But the vision of a single, monolithic Mongol Empire ruled by one great Khan from a central capital is already beginning to evolve into something more complex. A commonwealth of related but increasingly independent Mongol states. The empire you built is too big, too diverse, too dynamic to remain static. Its division has begun, even as your name and your laws continue to inspire awe and demand obedience. The Mongol Empire, even as it begins its slow metamorphosis from a unified entity under Ogedei into a commonwealth of powerful, related Khanates, has already irrevocably reshaped the world. Your legacy, Genghis Khan, is far more than just a tale of brutal conquest and a long list of vanquished foes. It's about redrawing the maps of continents, forging new connections between civilizations, and setting in motion forces that would influence the course of history for centuries to come. It's impossible to overstate your impact. You didn't just make waves, you caused a historical tsunami. First, let's acknowledge the sheer, devastating scale of the Mongol conquests. the initial invasions brought unprecedented destruction and loss of life to vast swathes of Asia and Eastern Europe. Entire cities were wiped off the map, ancient irrigation systems destroyed, and populations decimated through warfare, massacre, and the ensuing famine and disease. Some historians estimate that the populations of China, Persia, and parts of Central Asia dropped significantly during this period. It's a stark and sobering part of your story, a reminder of the immense human cost of empire building on such a grand and rapid scale. Yet, paradoxically, out of this crucible of violence and destruction emerges the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol peace. Once the initial conquests were complete and Mongol rule was firmly established across this enormous landmass, an era of relative stability and security dawned within its borders. For roughly a century, from the mid-13th to the mid-14th century, it became possible to travel from the Black Sea to the China Sea with a degree of safety previously unimaginable. You and your successors understood the value of trade and the Yam system. Along with patrols and a unified legal framework, your Yasa made the ancient Silk Road routes more secure than ever. Merchants like Marco Polo and his family could undertake epic journeys, bringing back to Europe tales of the fabulous East and, more tangibly, goods and ideas. It wasn't exactly a package holiday with travel insurance, but it was a definite upgrade in transcontinental commuting. This revitalized Silk Road becomes a conduit not just for silk and spices, but for a remarkable exchange of technologies, cultures, and knowledge. Chinese inventions like gunpowder, the compass, paper money, and printing techniques make their way westward, eventually transforming European society. Islamic achievements in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy travel east, influencing Chinese scholars. Religions also spread along these routes. Islam continues its expansion into Central Asia and beyond. Buddhism moves further into Mongol territories, and Nestorian Christianity maintains its presence. Diplomatic envoys from European kings and popes, initially sent out of fear or curiosity, reach the Mongol courts, leading to the first sustained direct contacts between these distant civilizations. It's the medieval version of global networking, and your empire is the platform. The political geography of the world is fundamentally altered. Old empires, like the Khwarezmian Sultanate, the Jin dynasty of China, the Tangut Xixia, and later, the Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad, sacked by your grandson Hulagu in 1258, are swept away. New political entities emerge from the crucible of Mongol rule. In Russia, 2 centuries of Mongol Golden Horde overlordship, often called the Tatar yoke, had a profound impact. Historians still argue whether this period primarily retarded Russia's development by isolating it from Europe, or if it inadvertently contributed to the eventual rise of Moscow as the center of a unified Russian state. As Muscovite princes learned to navigate Mongol politics and consolidate power, in China, your grandson Kublai Khan establishes the Yuan dynasty, unifying all of China under Mongol rule for the first time, and adopting many aspects of Chinese governance while maintaining Mongol distinctiveness. In Persia, the Ilkhanate, founded by Hulagu, sees Mongol rulers eventually convert to Islam, fostering a vibrant new Perso-Islamic culture. Your military innovations, the emphasis on discipline, mobility, coordinated cavalry tactics, psychological warfare, and siegecraft leave a lasting mark. Armies across Eurasia are forced to adapt or be overwhelmed. The shock of Mongol victories spurs military developments in Europe and elsewhere. And while the direct genetic legacy is a more modern discovery, studies on the Y chromosome have famously suggested that a significant percentage of men in a vast region of Asia share a common male line ancestor from the Mongol era, often popularly attributed to you and your prolific descendants. Talk about leaving your mark. However, there's a dark underside to this increased connectivity. The very trade routes that facilitate the exchange of goods and ideas also become pathways for disease. A crucial and tragic mainstream historical fact is that the Pax Mongolica likely played a significant role in the westward spread of the Black Death. The bubonic plague, from its presumed origins in Central Asia or China. The plague traveled along Mongol trade routes, reaching the Crimea by the 1340s and then spreading catastrophically throughout Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, killing tens of millions and altering the course of societal development. It's a grim reminder that interconnectedness can have unforeseen and devastating consequences. Your enduring image, Genghis Khan, remains complex and contested. To many in the lands your armies overran, you are the ultimate symbol of barbarity and destruction. Yet, in your homeland of Mongolia, you are revered as the nation's founding father, a unifier, a lawgiver, and a military genius. Modern historians continue to grapple with this dual legacy, attempting to understand the man who unleashed such terror, but also created an empire that fostered unprecedented levels of intercontinental exchange and laid some of the groundwork for the modern interconnected world. You didn't just conquer territory. You fundamentally redefined the parameters of empire and left an indelible imprint on the historical trajectory of multiple civilizations. The world you left behind was vastly different from the one you were born into, a testament to the sheer force of your will and the revolutionary nature of your vision. The campfires of your armies have long since turned to ash. Genghis Khan, the thunder of your cavalry now just a faint echo in the annals of time. The vast empire you forged, held together by will and sinew and the swift horses of the Yam, eventually yielded to the pressures of distance and the differing ambitions of your descendants, fracturing into great khanates that would each chart their own distinct historical course. Yet, the echoes of your passage across the world stage continue to resonate. Even now, nearly 8 centuries after your death on that final punitive campaign, the world map was violently redrawn by your conquests. Ancient dynasties toppled and new centers of power established. The channels of communication and trade you blasted open between East and West, while initially carved by the sword, fostered an exchange of goods, ideas, and unfortunately, even devastating pestilence, knitting far-flung civilizations into a more interconnected, if sometimes painfully so, global tapestry. Your laws, your military innovations, your sheer, unyielding ambition, all left an indelible mark not just on the lands you conquered, but on the very way history would unfold. As the listener, perhaps you now drift further from these tumultuous scenes of conquest and statecraft. The clamor of battle fades. The cries of victory and lament recede. What remains is the vast, starlit stillness of the steppe, the whispering wind carrying tales of an age when a single nomad rose from obscurity to hold the world in his grasp. The questions of legacy, of brutality versus brilliance, of destruction versus connection, may linger gently in your mind, a quiet contemplation as you ease further into the quiet of the night. The story, for now, is told